Hello, Forecaster here again, and we are back for episode 54 of the Railcraft server Let's Play. And I've been doing some testing off camera, and I realized that, for one thing, using the daylight sensor to tell what the time of day is not reliable, because when, for example, when it starts raining, it actually gets darker, which affects the light sensor as you would expect. So, fortunately, there is an alternative thanks to Open Computers, so we're going to be using that instead. Another thing is we're going to jump over to IntelliJ. I realized that I was using the event wrong. The actual arguments are these here. So we have we get two numbers, the from, which was the previous redstone strength, and 2, which is the current redstone strength. And that is, of course, the value we want to pass to the API. As you can see, I added a print statement here. I also had the event name wrong at some point. It said redstone change. Corrected that to redstone changed. So, we are going to start working on the actual API side. However, we have these two values, but I realized that since I'm putting all of this in a video, I don't want to allow just about anyone to send data to this system, because that would potentially be very bad. So I'm going to implement a light security system. So you'll see here that I have a file called API key, and that key contains a UUID and nothing else. And we're going to go in here and we're going to copy this code that I've highlighted, and we're going to place that here, and then update this a bit. So let's say API key, and then we'll update that, and then we'll update this to read from the API key.txt file, and we'll update the error message like that. So what this is going to do, and we also actually need to require file system, otherwise that's not going to work. So this is going to open the API key text file, and it's going to read all of the contents and put it into this variable. Then what we're going to do is we're going to pass that, and we're going to call it key to or with our request. Now, because of the light thing, we're also going to want to add something to our main loop down here. We're going to have it sleep for 10 seconds, and we're going to create another data here, and we need to also pass the API key with that, and then type is going to be time, and then the value is going to be OS date. OS date outputs a string that contains the current date and time of the world, the in-game world. So we're going to use that, and then we're going to submit a request and send our data with it. And here we're also going to print the return value of the request. So whatever we pass back from the API, we're going to print that out like this. So that way we can pass error messages or success messages back, I guess. Not sure why that is highlighted as an error. I think I'm going to disable that inspection. Come on. Whatever. The IntelliJ Lua highlighting is a bit weird. But that's fine. So this part is pretty much done. Now we're going to pop over to this project. And as you can see, I added a bit of a style to this so that the background is black and the text is white, because I want to burn my eyes off. And you'll notice that I've also created a file here called constants.php. And this contains a single variable called key, which contains the same UUID as the API key text file on the Lua side. And now we're going to create our endpoint. So we'll create a folder called API. And in this folder, we're going to create a PHP file, which is different from the PHP page I used to make this index file. We'll call it update data, and then enter, and we'll get an empty file without the HTML stuff in it. So first we want to require once, and then because we are in a subfolder, we want to go back up one, which is one level, which is what these dots are. And then we want to load the constants file. And this will give us access to the variable key that I have defined. And you'll just have to trust me that it's there, I guess. Because I can't show it because I don't want to show the actual value, the UUID, of course, would defeat the point. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an if statement here. And we're going to check using isSet, which checks if a variable passed in is null or not. And if it isn't null, it returns true. Otherwise, it returns false. And we're going to check the post global variable, which contains all the post arguments sent to the script by the request. And the internet cards request method in Open Computers sends a post request if you send data. If you don't send any arguments or send a string or a table, it will send a get request. But we will be receiving a post request. And we're going to check for the key value. And if it is set, everything is fine. Otherwise, we're going to kill the script and print or return the message no key received. And that will be printed by the script on the Lua side. Then we're going to want to compare if the key is set, key value is set and received. We want to compare that to the key variable we have in constants, and it will say that IntelliJ will say that it's undefined, but we can fix that by marking it as a global variable, telling the syntax highlighter that it's available from outside of this script. If they don't match, we want to kill the script again with the message invalid key to tell you what happened. If they do match, the request is valid. We then want to check if type and value are set. Otherwise, we're going to return the message invalid or insufficient. I did not spell that correctly. There we go. Insufficient arguments. If they are the same, we are going to want to load in. We're going to initialize a new array, an empty array, and then we're going to look for a file. So if file exists, then we're going to back up one again, so we get into the project root, and we're going to look for a file called data.json. If the file exists, we want to load that. So we're going to JSON decode and then file get contents, and then we'll point to that same file. And for JSON decode, we want to pass in a second argument saying true, because we want it to output an associative array that is an array with string keys instead of an object, because it's a bit easier to work with there. So if it finds a file called data.json, it's going to load the contents of that in. It's going to assume that it is valid JSON, which is what we're going to use to store the data, because we have a built-in JSON decoder or encoder. Now, if the data happens to not be valid JSON for some reason, this is going to return null. So we want to do an isSet check on data to make sure that it is not null. And if it is null, that means it failed to load the data. So we can return that instead. Otherwise, we are going to use the type as our key in this array, and we're going to set the value of that to whatever is in value. So this is simply going to update the array. If the type already exists as a key in the loaded data, it's going to just overwrite it. Otherwise, it's going to add it. And then we want to save this. So we want to we want to file put contents and then data.json. And then we want to pass in JSON encoded version of data like that. And that's going to turn the array back into JSON, and then it's going to overwrite data.json with that string, thus saving the data. So that's pretty much it. So we're going to upload that quickly. And if we now go back, actually, we need to do one last thing. We now have a URL, a file on my web server that we can reference, and we need to put that in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a URL variable, and we start off with HTTP, we have the protocol, and then my my domain, which is towerofawesome.org, and then the page or the site folder, which is called FFS for Forecasters Forecasting Services. And then we want the API folder we created, and then the file name, which is update data. And we don't need the extension, which is nice. The Apache web server will figure out what file we're after even without the extension. And then in here, we're going to reference the URL variable as well as here. Otherwise, it's not going to work very well. And then I'm going to upload that to the world. And now we're going to pop into Minecraft. And I'm going to do time set day. And if we now start this, the light level should change soon, because, well, sun's going up. There we go. So you can see that light level went up, and we didn't get an error back. So that basically means that the because we don't send anything back on success. We only send error messages back. So nothing is good. So this is going to keep updating as the sun goes up and the light level increases. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop back into here, and then we're going to go into this project, and in the remote host we'll have some stuff, and I'm actually going to obscure this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the created file from the server, and we can see here that it has created a data.json in the root of the project. I'm going to open that, and we can see that it's setting the light level. And if we go back to Minecraft, you can see that it last set it to 13, and shortly it's going to go up to 14 from 13, and then we can re-download the data file again, and it should have 14 in it. There we go. So let's go back. We'll hit deployment download on this, overwrite the local file, yes, and it now says 14. So it is updating this file on the web server with the data it receives from the Minecraft world. And the reason I obscured the remote host panel, by the way, is because I have, it shows my entire web server, and there's a lot of various folders in there that for different sites that I don't necessarily want to display, so just to be safe. So we're going to go into the index file here now, and what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a new file here, and we're going to call it inc_functions. And I usually do this. Inc means include, or stands for include, because we want to include this file in other files to use it. We're going to define a function here called load data, and then we're going to pass in a path. And then we're going to go into our API endpoint here. We're going to take this code here, and we're going to put that into here, because we're going to use this in the index file as well to load the data from this from the file. And then we're going to append the path to the beginning of this here and here. So path. And then we are going to return data. And we can update this. We'll put load data here, and we'll pass in that because we want to go back up one level. And we'll need to also include the functions file, so we have access to that function. And then we're going to do the same here, because we're in the same on the same level. We don't need to go back one. And then we're going to do data equals load data. And here we're not going to pass in anything because we're already on the correct level. And I could pass in an empty string, but instead what I'm going to do this the right way going to set a default value for path here, or the slightly nicer way, I suppose, which means we don't have to pass in an empty string here, because we'll assume empty string. So then we're going to go down to body here, and we're going to create a tag, so we can write PHP script. And we want to do an isSet on data to make sure that it's actually loaded the data. Else we're going to echo fail to load data, an end tag like that. Here we're going to simply do a for each on data and get the key and the value. So we'll iterate over the array, and we can print the key and then colon and then print the value and then the end tag like that. And then we'll upload that, and then we'll go to the page here, which I already opened a tab for, and we can reload the index, and we'll print out the values in the array. Now, I noticed that in Minecraft, it started printing failed to load data. So that's not good. That means there's an issue in here. Oh, right. Whoops. Probably want to set that. So now it should work. And now we can see in Minecraft the light level is going down again. So once it updates it from, once it goes down from 13 to 12, it should update the, now that we fixed it. So now if we pop back to the page, now it says 12. So we can now access this. And of course, it's not going to, Actually, we have a bit of an issue, because as you can see, it only has the time and the light values, because those are the only ones that it has received, and it won't receive any of the seasons the values until those actually change. So we're going to fix that by having it update all of them on program when the program starts. So after registering the, I don't know what that, someone hunting outside or something. No, we don't want a function. What we'll do is do for key value in pairs, not pairs, pairs. Let's see, inputs do, and so we'll iterate over our array up here, and key will be the address, and value will be the type. So for each of these, we're going to let's see, local val equals component proxy, and then we want to use the key as the address, and then we're going to get input, and we're going to need a side, actually. So local side equals, I think it was east, and then we're going to need the local sides equal required sides. We're going to need the sides API to convert that into a number. And then sides, side. And that should get the redstone input for this specific type from the redstone IO block on the side. Put it into val. And then we're going to local data, create a new array. We need the API key. The type is going to be the value of the table we're iterating over, and then value is going to be val. And then we're going to do net request to URL, and we're going to send data, and then for chunk in do print chunk. There. So now what should happen is once we start the program, so let's kill the program, and it should terminate after about 10 seconds, or within 10 seconds. And then we're going to start it up again. And nothing happened, no error messages, which is good. So now if we go back to the site, you'll notice that it added the season and the weather values, even though they are all 0 except spring, which is currently 8. I think that was 7 before, but I'm not entirely sure. So now we have all of this data, and it's going to receive updates. Now the seasons advance pretty slowly, but they do advance. There's a command that is supposed to let you set the season, but I don't know how. I don't know what the season IDs are. I'd probably have to look in the source code of the mod or something to find them, because they're not the obvious ones like summer and autumn, winter. Those don't work. So I can't forcibly change the season in my test world right now, unfortunately. Hopefully I'll be able to do that later on when we're testing. So we're pretty much out of time, but in the next video, in the next episode, we're going to look at displaying this data in a better way. And I'm thinking something like progress bars to show the various levels. And of course we have the time, which updates every 10 seconds. It doesn't update constantly, but it should be accurate enough to... Oh, there's another shot. But yeah, so it's currently night, so in the world, so light level is 0. If I use time set day again, it's going to update, of course. So, and then later on, we're also, maybe in the next episode, we're also going to use set up JavaScript on the page that will auto update this data without having to sit here and reload the page, just as a convenience. So with that, I will see you in the next episode.